There we go. Hey, Pete.
How are you, madame?
I don't know.
Yeah. We'll have a lovely conversation.
Did you see my lovely mail in response to the other lovely mail? Seriously. I'm supposed to follow.
Jason, are we on the air yet?
We're not on the air, but there are public present.
That's kind of what I figured. Let us hold our discussion
Let
until
us-
we're in session.
Let us pray.
We always do.
Yeah. Oh my God.
All right. Do we have word on who is coming tonight?
I only know that Carol Bradford is not.
Okay.
And I know that
so then
I know she had feelings and thoughts about a recommendation.
Okay.
That far. She didn't tell me, but I kind of remember what she said. And that we'll just discuss that as it is. I didn't hear from anybody else except Florence is coming.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Well, that's 3. We just need 1 more. So hopefully we get our 4th. There's Florence.
Hi.
Good evening. You're muted.
I know. I was being told that.
I take it you are in the office.
Yes, this is my sun porch office.
Oh, well, that's even better. I was saying that was pretty fancy woodwork for inside the house.
Yeah, it's my sun porch. There's cats wandering around too.
Excellent.
That's how you know it's not the office.
My cat with me.
Yeah, I'd probably keep you warm in there.
Because make it seem, more realistic.
Right. I kicked the cat out of my office.
Oh, there'd be hell to pay if I did that. Yeah, it'd be
shouting at the door and all that.
So there are 3. Okay. What will be, will be.
Going to put everybody into Brady Bunch mode here.
Oh, yeah.
Easier to see everybody.
There we go.
Like I have 1 minute. I'm going to go pour a cup of tea.
You do?
Yep.
Fortify yourself. My son's fiance has COVID.
Oh dear. Yeah.
It's their dealing, but
not fun.
Elizabeth, no, and Tamara, good. Okay.
It is 5:30 now. I think we're still waiting on enough for a quorum, but just wanted to
We're hoping, yeah, a little more minutes. Okay. I think I will begin the meeting and then we'll hope that we have a quorum when we get there. I would like to call to order the December meeting of the Urbana Human Relations Commission. Due to the governor and mayoral emergency orders, the Urbana City Council chambers are not open to the public during this meeting. Those wishing to provide public input, please follow the instructions on how to provide public input. Anyone can watch the meeting on streaming services, UPTV, or attend virtually via Zoom webinar. And Francis Wigberg, I'm in the chambers tonight. Can we have a roll call, please?
Carol Bradford, Stacy Burnett, Reverend Florence Kaplow,
Here.
Daniel Larson, Peter Resnick,
Here.
Francis Rigberg.
Here. Okay, we do not have a quorum, but we have an agenda which we cannot vote to approve. And we
I have one question with regard to the agenda.
Yes,
and
please.
if we do get our extra person, we can vote to add this.
Okay.
I'd at least like to start a discussion about the topic that came up during the appeals hearing regarding prior conviction record.
Mm-hmm.
Would you want that as a new business item, or should we just discuss it under your update on the appeal?
I think it depends on why
we obviously can't take action on anything tonight because not only for the not a quorum, but it wasn't announced. So it would just be the beginning of a discussion on the matter.
Okay, if it came under anything, it could come under proposed changes to the ordinance, I guess, or the appeals hearing discussion.
Okay.
If we're discussing it in terms of clarifying things, for that I think we can do in either of those contexts.
Okay, I'll hold it until the update on recent appeal.
I think it's a discussion that's worth having.
Thanks.
Okay, we do have our minutes from last time, but we will hold on that. So we can move directly to public participation. Are there any hands raised? I believe Christopher has raised his hand. Christopher, go ahead. We're under the new rules now, so it's a 4-minute.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Okay. My name is Christopher Hansen. I live in Urbana. You guys probably know my voice by now. You know my face by now too because of the recent hearing. A lot of things I brought up in the past few months that continue to go ignored. Let's take, for example, the CPRB, where I've tried to raise problems with denials of complaints and the CPRB not operating properly. And the only response I've gotten from this board from Ms. Rigberg is, you guys aren't the CPRB and you have nothing to do with that. And I've pointed out multiple times now, it's written directly in ordinance that your board is supposed to be dealing with issues of the CPRB. And I've tried to ask both the CPRB and the HRC how issues of retaliation in regards to filing of a police complaint are dealt with, and no one has answered me yet. That's also written in the ordinance. And I think the city has a big problem because we don't have anything that looks like an ethics board. I think the HRC should be acting in that capacity, but every time I've attempted to give information about something that I think is not operating correctly, I generally get the response, something along the lines of, that's not our problem. And so, that kind of brings me to the bigger question of what do you expect the public to do or think when you disenfranchise them in that way? I think you should consider that as you go about considering, changing the ordinance. And I continue to ask this question kind of everywhere in Urbana, especially in regards to, it looks like the city is going to changing, some police policy, and they already have. And I continue to ask the question over and over: what's the point in changing policies or ordinances if we don't actually follow them or enforce them? And no one's been able to clearly answer that question. I just don't understand it. It's like we're doing all this work and spending all this time and writing all this, flowery language just for the purposes of having flowery language and nothing further. So I don't get it, and I continue to be disappointed. And I certainly hope when you guys talk about the hearing that happened last month, I guess it was November 10th, that you discuss the role that the city attorney James Simon played and his conduct at that hearing and at the previous hearing. And I wonder what you think about that and how the public is supposed to interpret a posture that Mr. Simon has taken on, and he represents the city. And the posture is, if you try to approach this process, I'm going to try to kick you the hell out of here because we don't like it. And that's not a good posture for this board or for the CPRB or for the city in general. And I'll remind you of something that I brought up before. The city does not currently have any officially, publicly, whatever, stated set of values. We just don't have it. It doesn't exist. And that's not to say that we don't have values. I think the people of Urbana do have values. But I question if the city itself understands what those values are and postures itself in accordance with those values. So maybe when you're talking about making changes, and you should cover that issue as well and discuss, should the city have ethical values, and should there be a means for making sure that the city and its employees and elected officials follow those values. So as I have kind of left off every time I speak at your meetings, I'm right here. I'm happy to have a conversation. You're always welcome to vote to, not follow the normal public input rules, and we can have a back and forth anytime you want. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Okay, so that's it for public participation. We will move on to unfinished business. Proposed changes, and these mainly have to do with jurisdiction, issues of jurisdiction. It's limited to that, but it is not necessarily a simple binary thing we're dealing with. So on that note, Pete, do you have anything to report?
Yeah, so I didn't get any direct comments from folks, and I'm certainly willing to discuss it this evening. I'm kind of hoping at, either Stacy or Dan becomes available for the meeting so that we can vote on this. But either way, at least among the three of us, I'd like to get some consensus, and then we'll have an easier time moving this forward. So what I've written with Dan is a set of changes to the ordinance, one set of which would clearly include Urbana being a possible respondent to a complaint. The other set of which clearly excludes Urbana from being a respondent to a complaint. There's also a set of changes at the bottom of what I had sent out, and hopefully you've all seen it, that include changes to clarify what happened, the procedures in cases of lack of jurisdiction. And this was simply because it was not clear in the ordinance. It said, you would have this appeal for jurisdiction or lack of jurisdiction, but then didn't go, or probable cause or no probable cause, but then didn't go on to describe how you deal with jurisdiction issues. Yeah, Florence. And muted.
You're muted.
I'm looking for this document because it wasn't included in the materials that went out.
Not in the packet. If you take a look in your
and I'm also a little confused about what we can do as a commission without a quorum. What we can do and can't do.
We can discuss. We cannot take a final vote on anything.
Okay. So we'll go ahead with the meeting do the discussion pieces, but not vote.
Right. So for instance, we're not going to be able to approve minutes and we're not going to be able to vote to do something with this recommendation.
Right. Okay.
But we can at least get a sense of the room so that we know how to move forward.
Great.
As far as the
It's also
document
important.
itself, I'm sorry, go ahead, Fran.
I was going to say, it's also important in terms of the public. who's
Sure.
looking
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the process was minus quorum. So
As far as the document itself, I emailed this out, and let me find the date so you might have an easier time.
I looked under you and I didn't.
Or maybe Tamara re-emailed it for me. Let's take a look at things Tamara has sent out. So on October 14th, 5:33 p.m., Tamara sent out a message. Subject was simply HRC.
Change it. HRO changes.
HRO changes.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Now I've got it. Thank you.
All right. What I wanted to review here today was a little bit of the reasoning and then sort of get a sense from you to which direction we want to go. One of the things, and we'll talk more about this with regard to the appeal that just happened, but even in the appeal that I handled, one of the issues that is outstanding is that there is this basic conflict of interest, especially in the case where we don't have a current human rights officer for the city. We have the city attorney handling the case as the designated officer. On the other hand, the city attorney has to defend the city. That's part of the city attorney's job. And so it puts the city attorney in a completely untenable position. And it's something that I don't think we really saw we noticed that was an issue in the first hearing. And I think we saw it much more clearly in the second hearing because the second hearing was much more complicated as far as the particular issue and whether jurisdiction applied. So one of the things that the set of changes I have here, where it's to include the city of Urbana as a possible respondent, is that if the city of Urbana is the respondent, then there's going to be a designee, effectively a special prosecutor or a special officer that's got to be from outside the city, who does not have that conflict of interest to deal with the case. It does not take away some of the plausible conflicts of interest. During the hearing that we had for the appeal, Mr. Simon introduced a whole list of things that he thought were problematic about the HRC and its position with the city. I don't find those terribly convincing, but what I do find a little worrisome in the back of my mind is if any part of the city, including, as happened in this second one, a commission, although I believe in this one, the individual commissioners were named, but if members of commission are able to be part of a respondent, then that means that members of the HRC could too. And the conflicts of interest get weirder and weirder, which would lean toward excluding. I think the main conflict, though, is still with the city possibly doing the hearing, possibly having to act as officer, possibly having to go to court to get enforcement actions against itself. All of these things are really untenable.
Right.
So having some sort of special prosecutor, special officer for these purposes, I think would address those problems. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, even when I learned about the HRC, the fact that the city and all of its, sub areas were excluded stood out, probably stands out to most people, if they know about it. But the commission is a commission of the city.
That's right.
So I can see where the difficulties come up. Is it possible? So I'm just thinking of all the other cities around the country that
Mhm.
have various versions of human rights ordinances. Has anybody looked to see how this is handled elsewhere?
So I can tell you, I've not looked at other cities, but the state of Illinois has the state Illinois Department of Human Rights. And in the Illinois Department of Human Rights, you can file a complaint against another municipality or state agency. I think the reason that that works, there's two things. First, the state of Illinois government agencies are large enough that the IDHR can be relatively independent without a whole lot of worry about whether who knows who and what are the conflicts of interest and what have you. It's a big enough department. There's enough separation that makes that possible. The other thing about the IDHR complaint process is once the IDHR has a commission that reviews for probable cause, and it goes through similar processes to the way we do. But once it gets to the complaint has been certified with probable cause, it is then the responsibility of the complainant to go ahead and bring that complaint to the commission for the finding of whether there has been discrimination or not. In the city, we decided, I think rightfully so, that it shouldn't be the complainant's problem to bring the case. So the city attorney or the officer prosecutes the case in lieu of the complainant. So really, it's not the complainant versus the respondent, it's City of Urbana versus the respondent. So they structured a little differently at the state level. But between having a separate operation that they can really consider separate and having the final complaint is brought by the complainant, they avoid the conflict of interest issue that we've got. If the human rights officer in the city of Urbana were somehow very independent, it's possible you could pull this off. But it's tricky.
Yeah, it seems very tricky. I mean, but it also seems like a unfortunate loophole.
So the other thing to keep in mind, Fran, did you want to make a comment? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I do have a comment about the fact that it doesn't have to be strictly within our jurisdiction or.
I was about to get to that. Yeah.
Because that's
and
my little pet idea. And
I had written something up as a suggestion for a change that I did not yet send out, and I'll just read it because it was going to go out way past the deadline for the announcement of the meeting.
It also segues nicely into what Christopher Hansen was saying.
Yeah. So
at the end of his comment.
So section 12-22 of the ordinance, there are three different pieces: 1222A, 1222B5, and 1222E. And in each of these cases, and let me just get them up in front of me. So 1222A says the Commission on Human Relations shall cooperate with the city mayor, city council, city departments, agencies, and officials in securing furnishings of equal services to all residents, blah, 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 and maintaining equality of opportunity for employment and advancement in the city government. And then 1222B5 says that the purpose of Human Relations Commission shall be cooperate with the mayor, city council, city departments, agencies, and officials in establishing and maintaining good community relations, securing the furnishings of equal services to all residents. And in E, it says the services of all city departments and agencies shall be made available by their respective heads to the commission at its request, and information in the hands of any department or agency shall be furnished to the commission upon written request to the mayor. Upon receipt of recommendations in writing from the commission, each department or agency shall submit a reply in writing indicating the disposition of and action taken with regard to such recommendations. So we've currently got written in some ability to say to the city, we want to talk about this. We don't have a lever to say, stop it or we'll fine you or we'll get a court order to stop you from doing it.
Right.
I think having the city, if the city decides, of course, there's going to be a recommendation on our part, and we can hand them both sets of recommendations and say, we think you should do this one, but you might want to do, if you choose to do the other, here are some other things you can do to clarify. But I think if the city chooses not to be part of the ordinance, to exclude itself, we can write up something to add to this. And I had it scribbled down as, it is the intent and commitment of the city of Urbana to conform to the requirements of Article 3, Division 2 of this chapter.
Yes.
In its own employment practices and provision of city services to the public. Any individual who believes that the city of Urbana is engaged in a discriminatory practice as defined in Article 3, Division 2, may file a complaint with the commission. The commission shall review the complaint, work with the mayor, city council, city departments, agencies, and officials in accordance with Section 1222A, or maybe just 1222, in order to correct any discrimination that may exist and report the outcome to the public.
Yeah, it's a different process, but it's the same effect.
Hopefully,
So it's more
without the
collaborative.
enforcement layer.
Yeah,
It's collaborative rather than sort of pseudo
Not the formal-
legal.
Right.
Yeah, because that's when you're dealing with like some employer in the city and an employee. They're both out there, and this office is in a position to help them. And that process is set out. When you try to apply that particular process to the kind of complaint we're talking about, it has serious problems, and there is another way in. And that's what he's suggesting. And
So based on the letter that we got from the city attorney,
yes.
do you think that approach would gain support?
I would think so, because the concern of the city, and Elizabeth can talk to this if she wants to, but it's tricky. It was a very carefully worded letter. And by the way, I presume the letter will be published with our minutes.
We won't publish minutes because we aren't official.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Yes, go ahead.
I haven't actually seen a letter from the city attorney.
Oh, okay.
But
I don't know where. Yeah.
Since I am a respondent in this matter, I would.
Oh, that's also true. Yeah.
Not be part of the discussion.
Yeah, that's probably best.
It was not made clear to us on the commission. That was just a letter to us.
Right.
To the commission. I don't know who else was informed of the contents of that letter. I don't know whether the complainant knows anything about it.
Yep.
And
we should find out.
It has been taken from our hands.
Yeah, but thank you, Elizabeth, for pointing out that of course you're a respondent, and it would be inappropriate for you to discuss it. I'm sorry for that. And
thank you for understanding.
Yeah, no problem at all. So in any event, this is the other thing about that letter is clearly that letter is meant to preserve certain legal rights of the city, right? They're stating things that are not really for us. They are for some future court that might have to decide something. So either way, I would like this recommendation to be independent of either of these two appeals, right? We discovered that this was going to be a mess because of the appeals, but we've known that this was a mess for some time. And now it's coming back to bite us because the language is unclear and the procedures for dealing with it are unclear in the ordinance. So one way or the other, I think we're going to make a recommendation to change the ordinance. The question is, which way are we going to recommend? And then which way is the city council going to decide to?
We might not want to, we may choose not to make a recommendation.
Right. We can just hand them, well, we can recommend that they do one of these
One
two
of them.
things. Yes. that they need to change something, but we have no particular opinion as a commission on which way they should go. My inclination is for the city council to, and obviously this is just suggested text, and somebody from legal is going to have to go through it anyway. So it's not like we're going to hand this to them and they're going to either make the change or not make the change instantly with the text we give. But I would like us, now I'm speaking for myself, I would like us to push for them to figure out how to make themselves as subject to the ordinance as they can, both because I think it's good for the public, I think it's good for the city, and it doesn't leave a funny taste of, well, they're just not willing to follow the same rules. So,
And
yeah.
Just to throw a little curveball in, I'm wondering, so I know that our church just recently had to do, there's new state laws around anti-harassment and other kinds of training related to workplace best practices, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
My understanding is that this is a new state law that is now being required of every employer, regardless of size. I don't know if it applies to the city, but it also seems like if there is new state law, we might want to look at our ordinance in relation to that. I mean, if you're going to propose changes, for instance, that, that, go ahead, Elizabeth, it sounds like you know something about this.
Well, I was just going to say it does apply to the city, and we have our internal training program ready to roll out. We're getting that's becoming difficult because of the pandemic situation.
Yeah.
But it seems like, there may be language to mirror the state language that would be appropriate to put in to the ordinance. So for instance, I noticed that there was a little bit of language in the paperwork that people do around what is their anti-harassment policies and stuff like that. But maybe there needs to be something that's like, yes, we have completed this training. And I'm a little vague on it, except that I had to do it and that it's a new state law. And it was good. Actually the trainings that we did were excellent. They were all online. And, but I just wanted to bring that up, that if we're proposing changes, maybe you have a basket of changes, right? That
so 2 comments on that. I think it sounds like a good thing. My first is, although we can bring a basket of changes, I always have this concern about, for any ordinance, especially one of this size, this complication, and how long it's been around, to making grand changes to the ordinance, bringing individual items to the mayor and then the city council to say this particular thing needs fixing, I believe is a much safer position than having the long public debate that would instantly happen if we started to say, oh, we're opening up to all changes.
Well, that's a good point. I just wanted to mention it, as something for us to be aware of.
Yeah, and there are others in the ordinance right now. So for instance, the ordinance, although in one place it corrected it, there was an attempt a couple of years ago, there is still reference in the ordinance to sexual preference instead of sexual orientation. And the definitions are a little funky. And there is a point at which we should sit down and figure out definitions that need updating. That
would be a great project. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is this big question of the relationship between the ordinance and the city,
right,
is what you want to address right now.
Is
and these smaller things can be addressed down the road.
And I think also, there are a couple of changes in here that are clarifications, but they're clarifications about how we run this process and why, and we noticed it in relation to the city, right? So the jurisdiction, how we do the jurisdiction appeal. Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with whether the city is subject or not, but it's related to, we had these 2 hearings and we discovered that there's a hole. We should probably close those holes. So I think, I've been sort of tasked with the updates question in general. I'm glad to work with you to start getting together that list.
Small change,
uh,
edits.
yeah, of definition changes and things like that. I think it'd be great. So I guess to put the question to the 2 of you, since I've gone and offered up my opinion, do you have an opinion? It doesn't look like we're going to get our 4th member to vote on it, but at least we'll have some input in the minutes. Do you have an opinion as to whether we should recommend one way, the other, or say we recommend a change, choose which one? We leave it up to you.
I personally would want to hear from more of the commission before that and hear their concerns, because I want to hear all the concerns and one way and the other.
That's fair.
My instinct on this, my intuition on it is that, and maybe it's a better way to handle complaints in general, I don't know, but certainly when the city is involved and it's so intimate and fraught, that we need a commitment on the part of the city, a commitment to the values and the spirit and the practice of our ordinance. If nothing else, learn what's in the ordinance and know what we're committed to, because this does represent the city. So regardless of whether we're in the jurisdiction of it or not, we have to respect it and strive to live by it. I think the city should do that and should declare that. There needs to be a way to make this happen or correct it if it goes awry. And I think that a process other than a formal complaint process mediated by the city is in order. We have to have something different from that. And I think the idea of being able to bring a concern and a complaint for the Human Relations Commission, unless itself is under attack, I guess that would be different, but to take that complaint, not be defensive, with an open mind, and in the spirit of the ordinance, to talk with whoever is it is important to talk to get that matter addressed and resolved. And I think that's very important. Regardless if not one change is made to the ordinance, I think the city has to do that. Because we have to have fairness and the appearance of fairness. And you can't have both of those unless you commit to believing in your own ordinance. So those are my thoughts on it.
One clarification, and this just shows my ignorance. It's great being a newbie, I can just ask all these dumb questions. Can somebody just simply sue the city?
So 2 things. Someone can bring a complaint under the state human rights laws. The only issue there is that there are things in our local ordinance which the state does not recognize as protected classes.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And certain, things that, the state will not go after a city for having done wrong. So one of the, to go to Fran's point, whatever else happens, having the city commit to, no, we're going to honor our ordinance in some way is a good thing.
But someone can't go into the legal system and sue the city for.
I suppose, and now I start with, I am not a lawyer.
Right.
You could bring a tort claim, right? That somehow the city has damaged you,
Right.
and sue them. It wouldn't be a discrimination complaint. It would be for some sort of damages.
I'm just trying to understand kind of, okay, what recourse, let's say, just hypothetical, I like the direction that's going. It's kind of making sense to me. I'm aware that it's sort of in that realm of sort of like potentially toothless, but it makes sense to me, given that the commission is a commission of the city. And, to have the city make a commitment and then for the commission to sort of, in its best effort as citizens, evaluate, a concern and then have conversations with the appropriate, heads of city agencies or whatever, it sounds like that's right in the ordinance. But I'm just thinking, let's say, we do that and the city says, thank you very much.
We're not going to make any changes.
We're not going to make it. We don't agree. Can then a person who felt injured in some way have another recourse? And it sounds like they could go through, if it was a protected class within the state, they could go through that. They could bring a claim in the court system. So we're not the end of the story.
We are not, but I will again mention that the nice thing about our ordinance is if you do feel like you've been discriminated against and you go through the process and there is probable cause found, you are then out of the picture, right? You don't have to do anything. The city takes over and says, we're enforcing the law because this is for the good of the city that we stop.
But it is obvious that trying to do that on yourself is a whole different thing. I mean, even with the sort of secondary agent or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it does seem, so just to say my opinion here, it does seem like offering this to the city council as two possibilities, with the third piece of your suggestion that, we don't have in writing yet, that you just read, that had to do with the city's commitment to living up to the values of the ordinance, regardless of which way they go. I like, and the potential way that the commission could be useful to the city when there are cases where there's people are feeling that there was a potential not violation of the ordinance, but violation of the spirit of the ordinance by the city.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, makes some sense. So, but I totally also agree with Francis that, we don't have a quorum and there's, but 4 other people.
4 required for a quorum.
So. Yeah, but how many are missing tonight of the full commission?
3. So there's 6 of us. There's only 6 of us. Yet another thing that is in the mayhem of catching up is we've got empty seats. And so we also, call out to the public and to our fellow commissioners that if you know people who might want to be on the commission who want to apply to the mayor's office, find them, push them, get them here. Because
I will do so. Yeah.
That's great.
All right, then what I'll do is write up that extra paragraph, tack it on, send it out to Tamara to distribute to the rest of the commission, and then let's try and vote on it at the next meeting. We can, by the way, I don't know that given the holidays are coming up, I don't know that we're going to be able to move much faster on it, but for Florence's sake, if there is anything that we have an action on that we didn't get to during a meeting for whatever reason, we can always call a special meeting just for that purpose. And, with a week's notice, we can get together and vote on one thing. So I don't think we'll need to do that now, but if someone feels like we should get it moving, we can do that.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. New business. Aha, this is a pleasure. I get to introduce Lamont Peppers. Are you there? Yay, hi.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
We're great.
Doing great.
Lamont is who I had the pleasure of interviewing is our new community engagement coordinator.
Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Forgive the Christmas stuff behind me. I don't know who that is behind the curtain.
It's lovely.
So, Ramon, is there anything you'd like to ask us or share with us about your visions?
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you all for having me. It has been an overwhelming flood of positiveness and pleasure since starting. I have done my best to get used to all of not just niceness, but I mean, people have really been beyond amazing in helping me. Tamara, Jason, Elizabeth, also Liz Borman, Carol Midden, Kate, and certainly no less than our very own Mayor Marlin. It has just really been, if this is the honeymoon, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. But as far as, kind of what we want or what I'd like to be doing, I think, first of all, kudos to all of you all for your commitment and your service, especially during this pandemic. I don't really believe that we have spent enough time just actualizing and paying attention to the impact that this pandemic is really having on the mental health, the day-to-day emotions of our city, our community as a whole, and that we still have people who are serving in you all's capacity is a great service. So I can't say thank you enough. It is good to see that all of you appear to be healthy and good looking. So that is amazing. But moving forward, I think that we all are just concerting our efforts. I think I'm trying to treat everybody better in this pandemic. I think that kindness, hopefully is taking a bigger priority. Certainly there is legislation that needs to happen. There are ordinances that need to be reiterated and be fixed. I had the pleasure of being asked and moderating the use of force policy listening sessions that happened a couple of weeks ago. That was a huge honor, especially being a new employee. But I just think that as we move forward in this Advent season, as we move forward in this flu and cold season, still dealing with the COVID-19 virus. And, granted, I know there's a high anticipation that there is this antidote that certainly they're trying to get out. Being mindful of maybe those people who didn't make it to an antidote or are so adversely affected that the antidote is not going to reverse their situation. Being thankful. It is not lost on me that I was hired during the pandemic. So it's certainly trying to, as much as I can before the numbers got up, I was actually able to get out and about and go to visit students and schools and communities, and some of that is scaled back, but I put my mask on. I had the ability to go and visit with two amazing fourth grade students from King School. And so, yeah, I'm just really trying to operate appropriately in the learning curve, to learn more about the HRC, to become more proficient in my role as it relates to the CPRB, and just be a support system. I want to very much be a link to be to learn and get to where I need to be, so that I'm much more of an asset than a hindrance.
I'm sure you'll be an asset. Florence?
Well, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Great energy to have with us. And again, as you heard, I'm the newbie, so I get to ask all the dumb questions.
There are no dumb questions.
Actually, you're more newbie even than me.
Yeah,
so.
and the questions don't get much bleaker than mine.
So first of all, I know that this position, I think, sat empty for a little while. And can you just say a little bit about what it is? And,
sure.
And also kind of what you're bringing to it, your own background.
So the position was previously titled Community Relations Specialist, and that was previously held by Preston James, who served in a huge and very charismatic way. So I'm doing my best. But he was a former UPD police officer, injured in service on the job.
Hmm.
And I know that much of what he was tasked to do was to work in bridging the gap between the understanding, the knowledge, the where workings between the police department, our community, as well as bridging that gap with a lot of our students and marginalized populations, especially having a police background. I do not have a police background. I'm not a former officer. I actually come to you all. I previously was just at Urbana High School working as a student engagement advocate, working with those students with truancy issues, social emotional issues. So trying to triage services, to come up with interventions, and to be building and academic support. What am I going to bring to the position? I hope constant hope that's tangible. Someone that people feel like they can call or text or email and that they're going to get a timely response. I want to bring a mission of disagree versus disagreeable. I think now more than ever, one of the biggest things that's missing in the conversation piece is listening. What happens when I begin to and have to listen to things I don't personally agree with? How important that really is so that people aren't misheard, misspoke, misrepresented. I think I hope to bring that of jump in and help me out. This is not, while it's a one position title that is tasked with, first of all, being the staff liaison for CPRB and making sure that our agendas are sent out correctly and that I'm in meetings such as this one. But then also making sure that there are those parts of the community that maybe don't know much about city municipality, aren't touched by city municipality in a positive way anyway. Maybe who are underrepresented because years prior to any of us who are present now, the invitation to the table wasn't prepared properly. And so trying to change that narrative and that's where I stand, and then try to stay out of trouble. Yes, Pete. Yes, Mr. Resnick.
So your Pete is just fine, please.
Oh, okay.
And so with regard to your formal role, you mentioned staffing for CPRB. So does the role have any formal relationship beyond that one line that Mr. Hansen referred to in the ordinance about that the CPRB shall work with the Police Department, Human Relations Office, Human Relations Commission to anticipate and prevent problems? Is there any other formal role you have with us, or is it mostly with the CPRB?
Well, as it's written, and I like to be transparent. So one thing that which is what I really appreciate about this invitation here, is that the CPRB is actually written into the job description.
Okay.
Part of my formal position. So my position there is to make sure that I'm in attendance for meetings. I, along with Tamara, and much more Tamara than me, but I'm learning as far as preparing the agendas, making sure that our members have copies of the unfinished minutes, and really just being a key participant as far as receiving complaints and appeals and setting up hearings. So kind of more of an administrative assistant for the CPRB. Now, as far as the HRC is concerned, I, though never been asked, let me formally say, would love to assist and work directly with you all in any way possible. I think one of the wonderful things about me coming in this position now is I get to help design what the community engagement position looks like moving forward. Because there's a name shift and there's some duties that are shifted. And so when it was put to me that I, had been asked to come tonight and been introduced, I would much rather it not be a one-spot shot, as much more that all of you feel that, hey, we've got some issues. Why don't we run this by the Mon, or can we invite him to come share? Or are there any presentation matters? I really want to be part of the action pieces that are happening. And I know much of that is virtual right now due to the pandemic, but anytime that I can be of an assistance, whether it's boots to the ground or just a presence, I'm more than willing.
That's great to hear, and thank you for that. And to reverse the invitation, especially given that line in the CPRB part of the ordinance, do feel free to, if you've got stuff from the CPRB that you think this should be one of those things that the Human Relations Commission should be consulted about, please, our doors are open, and we'd love to hear from you about that stuff.
I've already got a toe in, so it's too late to take it back.
Thank
It's
you.
music to our ears. Music to our ears.
Anybody else? Because I don't want to take up a bunch of you all's time looking over the agenda. I just appreciate you all carving out this time in the evenings, like a lot of our other committees that I don't think our city is really clearly aware how much sacrifice is made by people, you know, wonderful people like yourselves who say, hey, we're willing to serve, we're willing to sacrifice, and we're willing to kind of help move forward. So I don't want to take up a bunch of time. I look forward to coming back to as many meetings as you all feel necessary, though.
Thank you
Look
so
forward
much.
to it. Thank
Thank you all so much. You guys have a great evening.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lamont. That's great. Lovely. Okay. Now moving on to the recent HRC appeals hearing. I was going to say other things. I was hoping that I could, the appeals board, the panel did agree with the complainant. And I was hoping to be able to say that the conciliation effort was in progress, but that has been sort of not something that I'm associated with anymore. I mean, it's not something that I'm part of right now. So I really don't have a lot to report other than that it occurred and that was in favor of the complainant on grounds of jurisdiction and probable cause. But I don't know what else I can is even appropriate for me to say at this point.
I did want to include here, you know, one of the questions for probable cause that came up, the jurisdiction question was much of the discussion. The probable cause question was about the prior conviction and arrest record.
Yes.
I took a look. It was back in, as far as I can tell, April or May of 2014 that we wrote that Todd Rent wrote our rule for other employers dealing with this. Yeah. Tamara was able to find a copy from February, which is probably toward the end of the edits, but I did want to use this as an opportunity to get that document out and reread it, have us familiar with it, see if there are any issues with it currently. My read of the current text of the ordinance is that you can't advertise that you are going to do anything by way of any of the protected categories, that you can't advertise that you're going to look at that information and make it a part of the decision. Obviously, independently, you can do a background check and you can review the person's references as much as anything else. And what you do with that information, if one of the pieces of information you look at is that person's criminal background, you still have to make a showing that it is, and now I'm forgetting the line that's in our ordinance.
That there is a nexus. That there is a nexus was what I said.
That basically it is a bona fide job qualification that you have not committed this crime, or that you are of have a particular way of getting income, or whatever it may be. It basically reverses the burden of proof, so that if you do that background check, you're going to have to show that you've done it for a reasonable purpose and not used it in an unreasonable way. So yeah, Florence.
So I'm just trying to think of an example, in our own church environment. We do background checks on everybody who works with children.
Yes,
If something comes up that has to do with a former, a conviction around child safety, we
Right.
would not be hiring this person to work with children. So that's an example of using it appropriately. But if it
Well-
was a, or if it was a, but if it was a, carjacking, not necessarily.
So two bits. First, there's the question of having a conviction. The conviction in and of itself isn't what you base it on, right? It's what that conviction means. And so part of the rule was if you come back and find a conviction, and you have to do that after you've sort of made a provisional offer.
That's right. That's exactly how we do it. Provisional on,
If they come back with the conviction, it is, well, unless it's required by state law or something else, which for working with children might. But if it didn't have to do with state law in particular, it is incumbent upon you to go to the person and say, what's this about? And do you want to tell us, something that would explain why you are still suitable for this position given this conviction? So for instance, I pled to, X, but really what I did was Y has nothing to do with it. Or I'm on the sex offender registry, but it was because when I was 18, I had a girlfriend who was 15. And yes, that was inappropriate, but I'm now 52 years old and married, and that has nothing to do with my ability to care for children or what have you. Again, with the exception of state law overriding it. So you have to go through that process. So you can't just say, whoop, they came back with a conviction, therefore crumple it up. Nope, sorry, we're rescinding our offer.
and you can't say on the application or on your advertisement that this is going to be effective, right?
Ask the question.
Yeah, I'm
You
sorry.
do have to notify them if you're going to do the background check. That is
Later,
required.
but you can't, the first contact they have with information about that job. Isn't this correct, Pete? That it cannot advertise the fact that a criminal background check will be done.
That's my question about the final version of that rule.
Okay.
How we worded it and what
What
needed
does it
to be
say?
like. Maybe you had to notify. It was okay to notify them that a background check might be done on the application, but I don't remember specifically what it says.
Well, the rule that you're referring to,
Yep.
that isn't the ordinance.
That's correct. That was an interpretation of the ordinance.
Right. And
And
that
the
was
ordinance
never
doesn't say
discussed-
anything with this specificity, obviously.
Right. Yes, during the hearing, the actual complaint wasn't gone through point by point.
Right. So I think the reason I wanted to bring this up is, given that there was this question that came up, and it came up for the city, but it could come up for any employer, I think we do want to review, make sure that the rule properly reflects our current understanding of the ordinance, and that, when we're telling employers of any employer, even whether or not the city is involved or not, how to conduct a job search, that we do it in a way that we think will explain what's likely to happen in the future.
No, I actually think this is pretty important. And I mean, I'm sort of thinking once this is ironed out, it'd be great to do some outreach to actually to churches.
Interesting.
Yeah, because this is a big issue in their hiring.
We did this when we did it in 2014. We reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, and they were very nervous about the rule change. And I think in the end, they were at least comfortable with it. I shouldn't say they were marginally content with it.
Well, I'm also thinking that there'd be
they could live with the way it came out.
There could be some interesting sort of public advocates around it, like First Followers.
Yeah.
and talking about, what the effects are on human beings who have been formerly incarcerated
If you go back through
when this ordinance is not followed.
Yeah, if you go back through 2013, 2014 minutes, the folks who are now involved in First Followers and lots of other groups of similar sort came and gave lots of public input.
Yes.
One of the interesting things was they came starting as an effort to ban the box. And the answer we gave them was, oh, that's already banned by our ordinance. We're actually looking for something much more complicated here and want to say something much broader than that. So
That's great. Yeah. But it would be great outreach to churches.
yeah.
And this affects not
As
just
employers.
employment. Yeah, not just employment, but housing.
Yep. And we never did come up with a rule for housing, which we've talked about over the years.
Does this rule have the status of the ordinance?
The rule basically says at the bottom that if you follow this rule, there will be a presumption that you did the right thing when it comes down to a complaint or a hearing, right? So but remember, they've still got to satisfy the bona fide qualification portion. So the complainant can still come and say, yeah, they said it was bona fide, and they followed all these little instructions, but it wasn't really a bona fide qualification because, I stole a candy bar when I was a kid, but I'm being asked to sweep the floor. And just because there's money in the place doesn't mean that I shouldn't get that job. So again, it's a way to go through so that there is a presumption that you tried to do the right thing. And it can still be argued and you can still bring a complaint even if you followed all the rules. So that's all I had to say on it. I think it's going to come up at some point and we do need to have the discussion.
Okay. Okay. Workforce statistics. Elizabeth.
So I mean, clearly
We can't do the
Oh, we can't. Oh, we can't. Yeah.
But we can ask questions.
Yes, and I feel like I do need to say that the fact that we're not going to take a vote on these is going to become problematic because, as usual, we have, contracts that are waiting for approval. One I can think of related to a specific business that's listed here that is sitting in my electronic inbox for approval and has been for several days.
So on that point, I mean, we have in the past, and it's a fishy thing because it's not, mentioned in the ordinance. We have done this. Well, we'll do a temporary administrative approval if the people who are present are okay with it. But the other thing we can do is figure out a time that at least 4 of us can get together, especially now that we're doing these Zoom meetings, and have a quick Zoom meeting and do the approval if we give us a week's notice. So is it a week that you have to do, or no, it's 40. How long is the open meetings requirement?
I believe it's 48 hours. I'm going to ask you to confirm.
So even shorter.
I'm pretty sure it's 48 hours.
So I mean, if you need something approved, and we can go through and sort of get at least our 3 heads on, this is going to be fine or this is not going to be fine. Let's make a couple of phone calls to the other commissioners and say, we need 4 people on a Zoom call at this time for 20 minutes and we'll be done, or 10 minutes.
We'll have to think about the logistics because most of these public meetings are either live streamed or televised. And I think Jason is on here and maybe he can help, but we have one license for the Zoom webinar.
So we can only do it when there is nobody else meeting.
I believe so. Jason, are you on here?
Yeah, you are correct that we only have one Zoom webinar license. I will say, some of the difficulties in scheduling stuff is we don't know how long the meetings will last. If you're just getting on for EEO workforce statistics, I assume it might be under an hour, and there's a bunch of 5 p.m. or 5:30 slots open for an hour, or definitely during the day with my schedule, but dependent on staff schedule. Where we get into the weeds is every board and commission wants to have a Tuesday night meeting at 7 p.m.
Right.
at the same time.
So yeah, no, this will definitely be under an hour. I mean,
Yeah.
it should be under a
About
half hour,
15
even if we
minutes,
gave an
yeah.
opportunity for public input.
Yeah, and it would probably help if we did a 5 p.m. start time or a 5:30 start time. Our flexibility increases when we do that.
That's fine with me. We'll try to set something up for next week. Is that all right with folks?
With the staff folks, it's fine with me.
Yeah.
My schedule can be tricky, so we might want to identify the when now before
Okay.
I say, yes, I can do it. I have a lot of evening meetings too.
Yeah.
Or we could have ask Tamara to do a doodle poll
Yeah, that'd be
for
great.
available times. And because there's only 3 of you here, so even if you can all do it, it doesn't
We
mean
still need a fourth.
Right.
So yeah, a
We'll
doodle
send out
poll
a
for
poll
the 6 of
tomorrow
us.
morning.
Okay, great. Thank you,
That'd
Tim.
be terrific. I did have one question. I mean, for all of them except this one, I think a 2-year certification is fine because they either looked good with the statistics or were under 15 people. The only one that struck me is Ring Central. I mean, I took a look up at the company. Ring Central is a publicly traded company. They have thousands of employees. They do not have 21 employees. Now, maybe the 21 they put on here are the 21 who are going to be working on our contract. That might be reasonable. Their statistics are lousy for those 21 people. But either way, it sounds like they filled out the form wrong. So before I make a call, no pun intended, on Ring Central at this upcoming meeting that we hope will happen, we should probably ask them for corrected information. And if they want to say that these 21 are the people that they're putting on our contract, ask them what their affirmative action policy is and why the numbers are so lousy. I mean, they're in Belmont, California, which is in San Mateo County. Yeah, it's not a huge Black population, but it's a huge Asian population. I think it's 20% Asian. So the numbers just don't look good.
Yeah, we can follow up on that tomorrow. And
Is that
see.
one of your rush ones?
Yes, we're waiting to approve a new telephone system for the city, which will make remote working much easier.
Yes, I knew Ring Central, as a company. I forget what their old product was, but yeah, they do being able to forward to different numbers, and so you don't have to be on site. It works. It sounds like exactly what you guys are looking for. But yeah, the form is not filled out correctly one way or the other. So if you can get them to update that, and if they do, and maybe ask them about what their affirmative action policy is, and have them attach that, so we do know that they're making an honest effort at having a diverse workforce.
Another stupid question. What happens if we say no to a contractor that the city's like all?
We've had this discussion many times, so it's not a stupid question at all. The way the ordinance is written, and this is the other part of the ordinance, is we can say no, and then the contract is null and void. We have never actually said no. We have often said, we would like you to provide us with some more information. We'll give you 6 months to provide us with that. And
Right.
You must show that you're making an effort at diverse hiring, and show us what you're doing by way of that.
And they've all done it?
They've all done it sufficiently that we haven't had to have the conversation yet. And there's a couple of companies that have not quite done it, but their explanation has been, we're trying to hire union labor, and this is who the union is sending us. And there's another part of that section of the ordinance which says we're supposed to do the same thing reviewing labor unions that are involved in city contracts.
Right.
So at some point, we probably want to start having those we'll give you 6 months to inform us what you're doing with the unions, but we have never come up with a procedure to do that yet. And we should probably wait for our new HRO before we try and come up with that procedure.
How's that going? The search?
I'm not sure the exact numbers, but we have a number of applications that are being screened. And so we're a little bit backlogged in HR now, but it's moving.
Okay, good. Is there anything else you'd like to report, Elizabeth?
I was just going to tell you that since your last meeting, which I think was in September, we've had 2 complaints of discrimination based on disability. Both I referred to IDHR again because we don't have the staff to investigate. 1 complaint of discrimination based on race, also referred to IDHR. And one person called and indicated that he had a complaint of discrimination based on his conviction record, but I talked with him at length, and it turned out what he really needed was some assistance. And so I referred him to the township for assistance.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's it. Hopefully we'll meet again for a quick meeting next week. And hopefully next time we'll have a quorum. We can get some of this moving.
And when we should put on the agenda minutes to approve the quick stuff that we can also get out of the way.
Yes, approval of the minutes definitely would be a good idea on that.
Oh, one announcement, and it was mentioned earlier. There was a new police procedure that was announced with regard to traffic stops. As one of the members long ago, as the chair of the task force on traffic stops that we had some time ago, this actually fulfills one of the recommendations. I think it's a great move forward. Obviously, there are loads of things that the police department has to examine and figure out how to accomplish, but I just did want to make the public aware that this was a laudable move, and I thank the chief for actually moving on this. It's really great to limit the traffic stops to places where they know that there are traffic problems. And I think that's it lowers the opportunity for even just implicit bias kinds of issues tremendously. So
That's great.
thank you to the administration for taking that on. I think it's great.
And thank you, Pete, for having been apparently part of that process. That's wonderful. You may have saved some lives there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. And I will say this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Fran.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.